This conference will now be recorded.
So far we discussed about what is containerization, and with respect to containerization, what is Docker? As I already told multiple times, Docker is a containerization tool, but is it only containerization tool, or do we have any other containerization softwares other than Docker? We have a lot of tools like Docker, Containerd, Rocket, CRIO, something like this, right? But out of which popular one is Docker. In Docker, not only in Docker, like you have an image, you have a container, right? So to create an image in Docker, you are going to use Docker file. Image is package, image is package. Container is basically process of that package, process of the image. It's a runtime process of the image. Now here we have a network, container networks like bridge, host, none, overlay, these type of networkings, right? And also values. So networks is basically communication, communication between containers. These values are basically storage for the containers. So these values are especially important for what type of applications we already discussed. For a stateful applications. Now, if you understand the quick, concepts, Docker is nothing but these things, guys. Docker is nothing but all these things only. So Docker is nothing but an image. Image is just basically a package. Can I create a Docker image, Docker package with required softwares and libraries and configurations, whatever I wanted to have in that package? Yes, I can use Docker file. If I run that package, does that process will be up and running in the container, whatever you wanted to run? Yes. Suppose one application or one container, one microservice want to communicate with another microservice or database, any other container. Can I communicate using network concept? Container networking, container networking, right? If they are part of same network, does one container, I mean to say one application, will it able to communicate with other application, other microservice? Suppose if required, can I run any stateful application also as a container like database, Kafka Kafka messaging server, or a RabbitMQ or database or any other thing? If my application, my API need to communicate with the database or RabbitMQ or Kafka, if that is also running as a container, if both are in a same network, does your application will be able to communicate with the database container or RabbitMQ container or Kafka process? Yes, that is networking. But does bridge network will work if I am using name, kind of a container name or host name? Will it work? The default bridge, will it work? No. But if I want to use names, kind of a DNS names or host names, then custom bridge network. But again, can I use custom bridge network when I have a group of Docker servers, not single Docker server? I have a group of Docker servers and my containers are distributed to multiple Docker servers. Using container orchestration, I am deploying my containers in multiple servers. Then does that custom bridge work if the containers are in two different Docker hosts? No. In that case, what type of drivers comes to picture? What type of drivers will come into picture? Overlay driver. Overlay driver. The scope of the bridge driver is local. The scope of the bridge driver is local, which means only within one server that bridge network will work. Does that container network, can I create a container networking between multiple servers, multiple hosts using bridge network? No. In that case, overlay. So this is about networking. Volumes. Volumes. So what is volume? It's a storage. As I already told, does container file system changes exist if the container is restarted, I mean to say deleted and recreated? No. If I want to retain the state of my container, if I want to retain the data of my container, can I go with volumes concept? In volumes, there are two things. One is bind mounts is different, volumes are different. So we already discussed what is bind mount, what is volume. Within volumes also, do I have kind of a local driver, local volume, and external volumes also? If you see, Docker is only this much. Whatever I have explained in last 16 days, I just explained in 6 minutes. But if you know the concept, do you think will it be very complex? If you understand the concept and apply those concepts, no. That's it. Whatever I have explained in last 16 days, I just explained in 6 minutes at a high level. But if you really want to use all these concepts, you need to do a lot of practice. That's why it took 16 days. Right? Now, we have one more concept here called a Docker Compose. What is that Docker Compose and why do we need Docker Compose? Or what is this Docker Compose? Why do we need Docker Compose? So, Docker Compose, it's a tool. It's a tool for defining and running in the sense deploying. It's a tool for defining and deploying multi-container applications. Multi-container applications. What is the meaning of multi-container application? So suppose I have one application. If I want to deploy that application, that whole application, that application is developed using microservice architecture. In that case, do I need to deploy all the images of that, all those microservices as a whole application? I need to create a containers for all those microservices Docker images. So if I am not using Docker Compose, do I need to create containers individually for all those microservices which I want to deploy? Suppose your application has lot of containers to be deployed. Will it be easy for you to deploy using commands? Will it be easy for you to deploy using commands? No, I need to execute lot of commands. I need to execute lot of Docker run commands, right? Do I need to execute lot of Docker run commands if I have a lot of images to be deployed? For each image, do I need to create a container? To create a container, do I need to execute Docker run for each image, that is each microservice or your database also? Yes. So you may have a lot of applications, lot of microservices to be deployed. If you have a lot of microservices, will it be easy for you to deploy all those microservices as a containers using commands? No. So the problem here is, let me explain the problem statement first. Let me explain the problem statement first. One application consists of multiple containers. One application may consist of multiple containers, and one container is depends on other. One container is depends on other. Let's say you are deploying one application. That application is trying to communicate with other application, other container internally, which means mutual dependency, startup order. Suppose I am deploying one application, that application is internally communicating with other application. In that case, do I need to first deploy the other application, that dependent application, before I deploy this application, if that application is communicating with other application while starting the application itself? So do we have a mutual dependency or startup order? We call it as a mutual dependency or startup order. So if you have these type of problems, one application consists multiple containers, which means you need to deploy a lot of containers to deploy that whole application, and one container is depends on other, mutual dependency, startup order. So that process involves building the images and deploying them. So building images I can do using Docker, CI/CD also. But do I need to execute lot of Docker run commands? Do I need to execute lot of Docker run commands to deploy all those things? Complexity. The complexity of deployment, will it be proportional to the number of microservices or images you want to deploy? Complexity is proportional to the number of containers or images you have to deploy. So just to make it simple, don't think too much about this. Just to make it simple, we deployed this application yesterday, day before yesterday. We deployed this application. So how many images we deployed for running this application as a whole? Did we deploy only one image? We deployed one image, but without the database, is that application works? Without creating the database, is that application is working? That container is going to work? No. So did we deploy this one also as a whole? So how many images we deployed to make this complete application up and running? So to deploy this application, to make that complete application up and running, so we deployed two images, which means how many commands we executed to deploy this application? What are those? You guys are saying two commands, but I will say not two. I have executed even more than two also. Not only just a Docker run for this one, not only Docker run for this one, and also Docker run for this one. Did we created a network first? Did we created a volume also? Did we executed network? I mean to say, did I executed Docker network create also? -d, something like this. And did I created a volume also? Volume create, that can be local driver or whatever driver, X-ray driver. So I created a network like this. Did I use that network while creating a container? -network, -p, something like this. Something like this we have executed. And also that we already know all these environment variables we passed. That we already know. That is nothing new. We passed environment variables. But is this one command? Is this one Docker run command? Yes. Similarly, did I done that for this one also? But here, did I use some volume name? Did we use some values like this? Whatever, whether it's a local value or EBS value, I use that here, and I use that network, same network I deployed like this. So this is another command. This is one command. This is one command. Suppose if I have lot of microservices, do I need to execute lot of commands like this as a whole if I want to deploy? So to overcome this problem, instead of you are executing lot of commands to deploy, this is only for deployment, guys, not for building. Not for building. Can you build using Docker build individually each microservice? Even though you have hundreds of microservice, do you have a separate pipeline, continuous integration pipeline where you can build and push the images? But if you want to deploy as a whole, you can deploy individually also. You can deploy individually also from the respective pipeline. If you want to deploy individually each application, each microservice also, you can deploy from individual pipelines also using Docker run, just to give an example. But as a whole, I want to deploy that application. Is there any way I can deploy that application as a whole? All the containers of that application, all the microservices of that application, that we can deploy using Docker Compose. That deploy we can use in Docker Compose. So what is this Docker Compose? Is everyone clear with problem statement? Problem statement. Problem statement is nothing but the problem or issues. This one. So to overcome this one, in the Docker we have a one more concept called a Docker Compose. It's a tool. It's a tool for defining, running multi-container applications. It's a tool for defining, running. What is the meaning of running? Deploying the containers. It's a tool for defining and running multi-container applications. But can I deploy single container also? I mean to say single container application also? Yes. It is not like always multi-container. You can deploy single container also if required using Docker Compose. It's a tool for defining and running multi-container applications. Now, it's a YML file. It's a YML file. It's a YML file. So Compose contains, it's a YML file basically. It's a Compose, Docker Compose is nothing but one YML file. What is YML or YAML? What is that YML or YAML? You guys are already familiar with YML. What is YML or YAML, guys? You guys already familiar. You guys already used YMLs. YAML. What is that YML or YAML? Come on, guys. Is Ansible is YML? Is Ansible is YML? YML equals to Ansible? Or Ansible equals to YML? Do you think like that? No. In Ansible, your playbooks are used. Your playbooks, you guys created a playbooks in the form of what? In Ansible, you guys created your playbooks in the form of YML language. So YML, what is the full form of YML or YAML? It is YML or it can be YAML. So this YML or YAML, I think Bhaskar sir might have already shared one document about YML. While explaining Ansible, did Bhaskar sir has shared one YML basics? One separate document or no? YML basics.pdf. Hopefully he should have shared, otherwise I'll share. Did Bhaskar sir share this document while he was discussing Ansible. He might have explained what is YML also. Did you get this or no? You didn't get this one? Okay, I'll share. Okay, I'll share this one. So YML is basically ain't another markup language or yet another markup language. So it's a human friendly data serialization or data markup language. So it's a human friendly data serialization or data format language. So can I use YML for defining some data, some information? YML is a data serialization language for storing some information in the human readable form. It is similar to XML or JSON, but with more minimalist syntax. It is similar to XML or JSON. What is XML? You guys used XML also. What is XML? Is XML is also another type of markup language where I can maintain some data. Yes. But in XML, do we have a very less syntax? XML is not more human friendly. XML, do you have a starting tag, ending tag kind of attributes with starting tags and ending tags? Just to give an example, your palm.xml, if you observe, that is also an XML file. So in that we have lot of tags like starting tag, ending tag, structure, right? More structured way. Is it human friendly? Is your XMLs are human friendly? No. So the way we have a XML, we have a JSON also. These JSON files are widely used in the REST APIs. REST APIs. What is the full form of JSON? What is the full form of JSON? Anyone has any idea? JavaScript object notation. JavaScript object notation that is also used to exchange some data. Similarly, YMLs also data serialization language, but more human friendly. Does these YMLs are commonly used to create a configuration files? That can be any configuration file, right? In your application code also you will have YML. If you are from Java development background, are you guys defining your Spring Boot dependencies, your Spring Boot properties, your Spring application properties or dependencies in the form of YML, application.yml, if you are from a Java background? Does these YMLs are used in the code also, in the developmental code also? Yes. And also this is commonly used in the configurations also, in the DevOps also, in a DevOps tools like Ansible. In Ansible, your playbooks you are writing in the form of what files? YML. And in the Docker also we are using. In the Docker, especially in your Docker compose files, that compose files in the form of what? In the which format we are writing that compose files? YML. In Kubernetes also we will use YMLs. So your Kubernetes manifests, like you are trying to create a pod, a deployment in Kubernetes. So in which format you are going to that pod information or deployment information or service information in Kubernetes? Again YML. Suppose in GitLab, what is GitLab, guys? GitLab is a SCM tool or CI/CD tool? Is it a SCM tool or is it a CI/CD tool? GitLab. So GitLab is also CI/CD also. Will I able to write a pipelines in the GitLab? The way we are writing pipelines in the Jenkins, will I able to do continuous integration, continuous deployment also in the CI/CD using GitLab? Yes. So in GitLab, your pipelines will be written in the form of what? Your stages or steps in your pipeline, your build step, testing step, All those steps in the form of what? If you are using GitLab, again YML only. Suppose you are using Azure DevOps. You are using Azure DevOps, managed DevOps tools in the Azure. So your Azure CI pipelines, CD pipelines also can be written in the form of what? If you are using Azure DevOps again, YMLs only. YMLs only. So it is used in many locations. YML is one data serialization language, but whatever I have used in Ansible, that Ansible playbook, will it able to understand in a Docker? If I use Docker to run that Ansible playbook, does Docker can understand that YML even though it's a YML? No. Suppose I have a Docker compose file, does Ansible can understand that Docker compose file? No. But all are YMLs only. But based on the tool, based on the software, will they be able to read that YML and process as per that software whatever it has to do? Yes. All are YMLs, but each YML is different. Now, advantages of YML, I no need to explain already. Bhaskar sir might have explained. It's a lightweight, easy to write, easy to represent, human friendly, right? So in YML, basically how you define your data, that can be any data, as a key value, key and value. Key, this colon, space value. This is kind of a string, like this, key and value. I can represent a string, I can represent numbers, I can represent Boolean values, I can represent data like this. And also, can I create objects or arrays also? Object in the sense dictionary, like this, parent, something like this. This is general language. So in Ansible also you are writing a playbook in the form of YML. Guys, as I already told, if you are working on DevOps also, are you going to use some IDEs like this? Visual Studio Code. So can I have some extensions, kind of a plugins, where I can install YML plugin or any other plugin also, which will help our development productivity, which will reduce the syntax errors, all those things. So you can use this type of editors where you can install extensions. Extensions are nothing but plugins, like a YML plugin, So will it help me to write YMLs? So your Ansible also you are writing something like this. So this represents what in YML, guys? This represents what in YML? Is it represents a list or array? Is this represents list or array? Yes. So this one, tasks. This is also kind of a list or array wherever you see. So can I call this as one task? This as one task. Something like this you are writing. Something like this you are writing. Something like this you are writing. So can I call this as a one string key value? This is one property. This is another property. But if I consider this one, can I call this as an object or dictionary? Can I call this as an object? The top one here, object or dictionary? This is object or dictionary. Is this true or belongs to this parent? Is this true or belongs to this parent? Yes. In YML, everything is based on indentation. Is this correct, guys? Is this correct if you write like this? No. Can I write like this? Standards to space. Guys, don't use a tab space. Use a space tab. Don't use a tab space. Don't click on tab button. Use a space tab. You have a space, right? That one. So standards, how many spaces we will represent here? 2. Now this is one dictionary. This is one list, kind of a list. So can I represent any data in the form of YML in a human readable format like this? So in Ansible also we will use playbooks in the form of YML. In the Docker also you have a YML, Docker compose file like this. Docker compose file also like this. This is also YML. But whatever I am using in Ansible, like host, become, tasks like this, can I use same thing in the Docker compose even though it's a YML? Does Docker can understand whatever you are using in Ansible? No. But again, it's a YML. So in Ansible, in Kubernetes, you are going to use YMLs like this. So data serialization language in a human readable format. This YML works completely based on indentation. Indentation. What is the meaning of indentation? The hierarchy, the tab data hierarchy. So is Docker Compose also in the form of YML? Yes, I am going to share this document, just a basics about YML. What is YML? What is object? What is list? What is scalar? What is dictionary? I will share this YML, but this is nothing to do with the Docker. This is nothing to do with Kubernetes or nothing to do with Ansible. So YML basics. I'll share this one after the class. But you are already familiar with YML. Now in the Docker Compose also, are we going to write the Docker Compose file in the form of YML? Yes. So in that compose file, does that compose file contains information about your containers? Whatever containers you want to deploy, can I define all those containers information in the compose file? If I want to deploy 10 containers, can I define can I define all those 10 containers information? Or if I want to deploy only 2 containers, can I define all those 2 containers information in the compose file in the form of YML? Yes. So can I use this Docker Compose to deploy in a normal Docker, like a standalone Docker? Or can I use this Docker Compose with a Docker Swarm also? Docker Swarm also? Yes. But can I deploy Docker Compose files in Kubernetes? Can I use Docker Compose files to deploy in Kubernetes? No. So Docker Compose contains information about how to deploy your containers, and we can use with the Docker Swarm. It will compete with Kubernetes. We can compete with Kubernetes. Generally, the containers in the application is not going to build using Docker Compose. It will run the containers in the same machine. The containers deployed using in Docker Compose will run in same machine. If I use in the standalone mode, all the containers will be created in a same machine if I am using normal Docker. But if I am using with the Docker Swarm, does that containers will be distributed to multiple servers in that Docker Swarm cluster? If I deploy Docker, the containers using Docker Compose in the Docker Swarm, does my containers will be distributed to different servers in that Docker Swarm cluster? Yes. But if I am using in a normal Docker, standalone Docker, whatever containers I have in that Docker file, does that containers will be created in a same machine where I am deploying that compose file? Yes. So that is how it works. So that compose file contains information about your containers. Just to give an example, something like this. So this one is information about one container, like this is my container, from which image this container has to be created, what volumes has to be used for that one, what environment variables to be passed. So whatever I am defining in my command, can I define that as a service in my Docker Compose file? This is one container, one service. Similarly, can I define one more service like this? I mean to say one more container like this. Just to give an example, this is one example I am put here. So does my compose file contains information about my services? Services are nothing but containers. Can I call this one as one service or one container? Using all this information, does one container will be created with this image container will be created with this volume mapping with this environment variables. These environment variables will be passed to that container. And is this another container information? So generally compose file contains information about your containers. Now in the interview they are asking this question also. In the interview they are asking this question also. What is the difference? What is the difference between Docker file and compose file? Now what is the difference between Docker file and compose file, guys? In the interview they are asking this question also. What is the difference between Docker file and compose file? Can you guys tell now? Mamta said Docker file, we can deploy single container. Wrong answer. That is not correct. Using Docker file, are you deploying the container or are you creating the image? Guys, be clear on whatever we already discussed. So Docker file contains information about how to create the image. Docker file is used to create the image. So Docker file contains information about how to create the image. So using Docker file, we are creating image. Using compose file, can I deploy that image? I mean to say, can I create a container out of that image using compose file? If required, can I deploy single container, or if required, can I deploy multiple containers also if required? Multiple images, I mean to say. Can I deploy single image or can I deploy multiple images using that compose file? So compose file contains information about containers, how to deploy the containers. So Docker file is used to create an image, compose file is used to deploy or manage multiple containers or single container. Now, let's say this application. Let's say this application. Now, instead of executing these many commands to deploy that application, can I define all these informations in a compose file? And if I apply that compose file, does all these things will be created in a single shot? I mean to say, instead of executing these many commands, does all these things can be created using Docker compose file? So I can define like this. So we are going to write compose file in the form of YML. So what are the main attributes? Guys, is everyone clear? What is this difference between Docker file and compose file? Guys, I'm not sure how many of you are following the Skype group regularly. How many of you are following each and every message, whatever we are posting in the Skype group regularly, I'm not sure. But if you observe, we already shared a lot of questions, interview questions, whatever we prepared and whatever our students, the guys who is already attending the interviews from previous batches, they are also sharing the questions we already posted. If you guys observed all those things, did we discuss the 90% of the questions whatever has been asked in the interview already? Almost 95 also. One or two questions maybe they may have asked differently. 95% of the questions is already been discussed. Will you able to explain most of the questions whatever has been asked? 90% of the questions you can answer in the interview. But if you have for that one you need to attend the classes regularly, you need to practice all these things regularly, you need to do the assignments, then only you can explain. Same questions is asked for multiple students in our students. The guys who is attending regularly, the guys who is practicing, they are able to answer. But if they are not attending, they are not practicing, same questions, nothing new, they may not able to explain. As we told multiple times, we are really against the proxy. I hope you know what is proxy. Nowadays, everyone saying, sir, I need a proxy. The way we have a proxy servers for our applications, right? The way we have a proxy for our application servers like a load balancer in front of it. The way we have a proxy server for our application in front of our application servers, we have a load balancer, right? Now, people request proxy in front of them. So what, I hope you know what is the meaning of proxy now. Since this class is getting recorded, I don't want to go in detail. We are really against, but again, it's up to you, because that is your personal choice. That is your personal choice, because I don't know what reasons you have for that one. That is again your personal choice. Maybe you are desperately need a job. Maybe you have very bad communication. I mean to say, you have a good subject, but you are not able to convey. Maybe that is your personal choice, but we don't encourage all these things. If you understand all these concepts, I can challenge, you don't need any proxy for interview as well as for work also. For managing your work, for clearing the interviews also, you don't need any proxy if you have attended all the classes, if you practice. But there are some cases, because even though students are attending regularly, they know the subject, but they are lagging in the communication or conveying. For them, it may take some time. Maybe first 4 or 5 interviews they may not able to crack, because even though you know the subject, you are not able to convey properly. You are not able to convey properly in the interview. But if you attend 3 or 4 interviews, does that interview itself will make you to explain in a better way in the next interview? Like one after the other, will you be able to present more efficiently? Yes. You need to improve. You need to sit. You need to sit in your first. You give the interview, and you just keep a note of what questions are asked in the interview, what answers I have given, whether was I able to answer properly, even though I know, is that answer properly, right? All those things. Okay? You can test yourself. So 1 or 2 interviews, question yourself and answer yourself, or stand in front of the system, or stand in front of the mirror, ask the question yourself and answer yourself, and see how you are conveying, how you are communicating. Guys, there are a lot of things you can do. If you really have a commitment, you need to get a job, nothing is required in this world, right? But hard work and dedication is required. But if you have tough time, you need a job. If you need a job immediately, maybe that is encouraging you to do that. But we are not saying that is your personal choice. But you don't need that one, to be frank. If you are good at subject, if you are good at presentation, you don't need those things. But if you are not good at subject, you didn't attended any class, you have didn't attended any training, you didn't practice, you crack the interview via proxy. Once you get into a job, the guy who has done the proxy will come and sit with you to do your daily job activities. No one can work for someone else. No one can work for someone else, guys. Simple. Because they have their works. They will also have their work. Even though they charge, let them charge 20,000, 30,000 also. If he is also working professional, does he need to spend some time on his activities, in his meetings and other stuff? No, other stuff. Even though he is charging, even though you are paying some amount, you need a suggestion immediately. Will he able to pick the call and answer the call and give a solution if they are in meeting, if they are in their work, even though you pay? No. So you should not depend on anyone completely, but at least 5%, 10% anyone can help. 5%, 10%. I mean to say, so you ask your friend, I have this problem, how to implement? They will give the solution or design, but will they able to implement for you? They will give a solution or design, but will they go and sit with you and implement also? No. So that is very tough time, guys. So even though they are charging, in this no one will do the charity, right? So because they will also have their own problems, they will have their own you know work also, they cannot sit with you and code everything. So if you attended all the classes, all the practice, if you are done, you can easily crack the jobs in 1 or 2 interviews. Maybe one interview, go with a mindset saying that I will not get the job. Go with a mindset saying that let them ask whatever he want. Even though he is asking ABC, you explain XYZ. Go with that mindset. First present yourself, then you assess yourself. He is asking ABC, you explain XYZ. That doesn't matter. What he will say? We will get back to you. But he will never get back. That is fine. But sit after the interview and understand whether he has, he asked me ABC, but I have explained XYZ. So what should be the correct answer for that? Even though you know whether you have explained correctly or not. That is important, guys. Okay? So that you can test yourself. No, you don't need anyone. But without practicing, the problem nowadays I see in the most of the people, students, they don't want 4 months training. They want, sir, is there any fast track where I can complete within 1 month? Yeah, I can complete, boss. I can also complete 1 month, but you will not able to compete with the people who are already in the market, who are already in the IT. And that is important, guys. Just as a suggestion, I see, because day by day attendance is going very less. Now I see only 36 people except me. If any question asked in the Docker, whatever I have explained so far, will they able to answer even simple question? Forget about scenarios, forget about complex question, and they will come back, sir, I am not able to crack the interview. That is very bad, attitude or kind of a culture you guys are building nowadays. But that's your personal choice. My whole concern is whatever efforts I am putting, only few people are utilizing. Only few people are utilizing whatever efforts as a trainers we are putting. But I want all the people who join for the course also to get benefit, not only few people. For me, it doesn't matter. For me, it doesn't matter, but we are concerned about that. Otherwise, there is no purpose you join the course, right? So in the interviews, are they going to ask these type of questions? Suppose I have something like this, I have these many images to be deployed. I don't want you to deploy using Docker and lot of commands. Is there a way you can deploy? You will come and say, sir, in the interview, they're asking real-time questions. This is not a real-time, which we already covered, but you guys are not focusing. That is what my concern, okay, nothing else. Now, let's continue on this one. I don't want to waste much time. Now I don't want to execute these many commands now. Whatever commands I have executed to deploy this application. Is it possible for me to define in single file and apply that file so that everything will be created? Yes. So it is also in the form of YML. What are the root attributes or important attributes in this compose file? So there are 4 root attributes. What is the meaning of root attribute in the YML? The attribute which is going to start from the beginning of the line. This is, we call it as a root, beginning of the line. So we have these attributes like version, services, networks, and volumes. So version, services, networks, and volumes. So here itself you can understand this version. This is not a Docker software version, or this is not a Docker compose version also. This is Docker file format version, Docker compose file format version. If you are familiar with XML, is XML attributes are validated against XSDs? XML attributes in your XML, you have some attributes, right? In the pom.xml also you have a slash project, slash dependencies, slash properties, like that. So is those attributes will be validated against some XSD XML schema definitions? Yes. So similarly, I'm writing YML file like a Docker Compose or Ansible. Can I use anything like ABC, XYZ as an attributes or in the YML? No, right? So do I need to use some attributes which is valid for that tool or software? Yes. So I am using compose file. This compose file format version, you have something like this 3.0, 3.2, 3.34, something like this 3. So this version, is it a Docker software version or is it a Docker compose software version? No, it's a file format, a compose file format version. If you see Docker compose file format version. So here we have a lot of versions like this. Docker compose, let me open this compose official website. Docker compose file, right? So what is Docker compose? As I already told, compose file is a YML for defining services. Services are nothing but what? Services are nothing but your containers. Services are nothing but containers. Services, not servers. Services. Services are nothing but what in the form in the compose? Basically containers. Can I define containers, networks, and volumes for a Docker application in the compose file? Yes. So the compose file formats are defined like this. So this is that version, whatever version we are having in the compose file, right? Like 3, 3.2, 3.7. This is Docker compose file format version. So I can use something like this 3.0, 3.1, 3.2. Now, does all these attributes will be validated against that file format, whether this option is correct as per that file format version and others? Yes. Now, I can use any version like this 3.0. And also you can see compatible Docker version also, Docker engine version, Docker daemon version. Now, if I say compose file format as 3.8, and will I able to use that compose file to deploy if I am using Docker 17.0.4 or 18.0.6? No. But if I am using this file format version, do I need to use Docker also with this version? Yes. Now, let's say I am using 3.0 as a, I am using 3.0 file format in the Docker compose. Can I use that one with the what? 1.13, 17.0, 19.0, 19.04 also? Yes. Guys, backward compatibility will be there. You take any software, any application, do you have a backward compatibility? Which means even though you are using this version of the software, can I use this version of the file format? Backward compatibility, yes. So that is file format version. That is Docker compose file format version. I can use something like this also. Now this services, what do we define under this services? Can I define this information? This information, whatever I have highlighted, that containers information under services. But in the YML, can I define something like this? Here itself, that service name, is this correct? Wherever this is starting, is this is correct? No. Guys, this is placeholder. I am just representing this as a placeholder. So not you are not going to define like this. This is a placeholder. You are not going to define like this. Do I need to have some space tab? General practice, how many space here? 2. This is one service. For this service, what is the image? But again, for this service, can I define again exactly here the image? For this service, what is the image? That container, what is the image? No, it is not in this location. Again, do I need to have some space here like this? So can I define my image name? What is the image which I want to use to deploy that service or container? All this information will go and sit here. So can I define port mapping also if required? Ports, something like this. Your host port. You are just converting that container into service. That's it. I mean to say compose file. Can I define under which networks, under which network that container has to be created? Something like this. If required, can I do the volume mapping also? Volumes, volume name or bind mount, volume name or bind mount, your container directory. So this service has to be created. Service are nothing but container. This container has to be created using this image with this port mapping, these volumes in this network. If required, can I pass environment variables also? Something like this environment. Can I pass something like this? Environment variable name and its value. Environment variable name and its value. Whatever you want to pass. Now, if I want to create one more service, can I start another service exactly here? Do you think is it correct? Is this correct? No. So again, is this correct now? This is one service. Can I have another service here? For that service, what image, what network, what volume, can I repeat something like this? Is this correct? Do you think is this correct? No. So do I need to have something like this? So these services are nothing but containers. Using compose file, if required, can I just create a one service? That means one container like this, only one also if required. Using that compose file, if I want to create a 10 services, which means 10 containers also, can I define all those information like this? This is one service, this is another service, this is another service like this. If you understand, is this information is defined here? If you understand, can I define this information here? And also, can I define this information in another service like this? Yes. So can I deploy multi-container? I mean to say, can I deploy multiple containers using compose file? Yes. Now, what we are going to define under this networks and volumes? Can I define whatever I am doing? Can I create a networks also using compose file like this? Can this will be defined under this networks? Something like this. Space. Don't use tab space, guys. Use space tab. Your network name. Even though I don't mention this driver, even though I don't mention this driver like this. So even though I don't mention this one, whatever network name I have given here, that network will be created using which driver? If it is a normal Docker, standalone Docker, what driver will be used to create that network? Bridge network. But the same compose file I am deploying in the Docker Swarm, same compose file I am deploying using Docker Swarm, then what driver it will use to create that network? If it is a Docker Swarm, overlay. But if required, can I define network the driver also? What type of driver it has to use, whether it has to use bridge or overlay also, something like this. Now, suppose I am using some volumes here. I am using some volumes for my container, multiple containers or one container. Can I define this volumes information here? Whatever volumes I wanted to create and use, can I define these volumes under volume section here? Your volume name, and again driver. If I don't mention this driver for volume, what driver it will use by default? Local. Guys, volume, I am talking about volume, not network. What volume driver it will use? Local. If required, can I have something like this? If I already have this driver installed, if I already have this plugin installed, can I say like this, create this volume using this driver? So you may have a doubt, sir, here also you have a network, here also you have a network, but here also you have a network. What is the difference? So this is equivalent to what? Is this equivalent to this one, like creating a network? Whatever I have highlighted here, is it equivalent to that, like creating a network? And here also I have networks. Here also I have a networks. So what is this? What is this? Is it equivalent to this option, hyphen network option? Which means, am I going to ask that Docker Compose to create a container in that network? I am creating a network here. I am creating a network here. If I mention that network name here, does this service or container will be created in this network, whatever I have defined here? Guys, is it possible for me to create multiple networks also like this? Multiple volumes also like this? Can I create multiple networks also like this? Multiple volumes also like this? Yes. So is it simplifying the process of managing or deploying multiple containers? Does Docker Compose is simplifying the process of managing and deploying multiple containers? Now, I don't want to do like this. This is just a kind of a explanation I have given. So if you know the Docker Compose, whether you want to deploy one container, 10 containers, if you know the concept, will you able to define and apply? Yes. Now, I don't want to do like this. I don't want to do like this. Let me close all these things. I don't want to do like this. Commands. Now, can I write a compose file and deploy this application? Something like this. Something like this. Guys, as I already told, the way you have a Docker file, can I have that compose file also in that respective code? In that respective code, can I have a compose file also? Just to give an example, let me open this application. The way you have a Docker file, can I have a compose file in the source code? If you see this application you take, I think it is not there. Let me open. Let me open different one. Not this one. Let me open this application just to give an example. Now, if you see this application, the way I have a Docker file, the way I have a Docker file, the way I have a Docker file for this application to create an image, can I have a Docker Compose file also? Even though it's a single, I want to deploy only single container also. Can I have a Docker Compose file like this? where I can define which network, what container, and all those things. Can I define like this? Why there is no volumes here? Why there is no volumes here? Because it is a stateless application. This is a stateless application. So am I using any volumes for this container? No. So that's why, do I need to create a volumes and use those volumes in this container? Not required. So that's why I'm not using volumes. That's why I'm not using volumes here. Similarly, if I want to deploy other application also, do I have a compose file like this for that application? If that compose file is not there, if developer is aware about compose, does developer can also create this compose file and check in part of version control system? If developer is aware, he will do that. If developer is not aware, as a DevOps engineer, do you need to help the developer, or do you need to write that compose file as a DevOps engineer? But without knowing what is Docker, what is network, what is volume, what is Docker image, what is container, what is volume, what is networks, and all those things, you cannot able to simply create a compose file. So something like this. Just to give an example, this project, I already have a compose file. I already have a compose file. So here, did I define something like this? Did I define something like this already? Do I have something like this? Compose file, version, services. Is this everything related to one service? I mean to say one container, whatever I have highlighted, is this everything related to one? Yes. But you may have one more option here that I have not explained here. So image, from which image this has to be created. So there is a restart policies also, guys, in Docker. I have not explained that. Let me explain now. Restart policies in the Docker. We have some restart policies like always, never, on failure. We have restart policies like always, never, on failure. What does it mean? If it is a normal Docker, you are stopping your Docker daemon. You stop your Docker daemon, or you stopped your Docker server. Whatever containers which is already running, if you restart your Docker service, or if you restart your Docker server, does the containers which was already running, will it be automatically started again if you reboot your Docker server in a normal Docker by default? Did you guys observe that? I have some containers already running. If I stop my Docker daemon, I mean to say Docker process, or if I stop my server also, the Docker will be stopped and started. Does containers will be restarted automatically whenever you start your server back by default? No. But can I use some kind of a restart policies while creating a container? So in the command also I can use, guys, not only in the compose, in the command also I can use --- restart. If I say always, which means if I stop my server and if I start my server back, if this container policy, restart policy is always, is it going to start automatically even though you reboot your server or Docker process? Yes. So that is always. By default, never. By default, never. Never in the sense, is it going to be started automatically if you reboot your Docker server? No. Like you have some restart policies like this. But again, is this restart policies will be considered if you are using Docker Swarm? When you are deploying your applications, your containers using Docker Swarm, this will not be considered, guys. Sometimes in the interview, they are asking what is restart policies. Okay. So if required, can I define that restart policy also like this for that container, the way I am defining image, environment variables, ports, all these things? as I already given here, does this will be ignored if you deploy in Docker Swarm? This restart. Yes. Now, similarly, there is a one more thing here, deploy replicas to something like this. Does this options will be considered when you are deploying in a normal Docker, standalone Docker? No. So if it is a Docker Swarm, does all these options will be considered whatever I have under deploy? So what does it mean here? I have given deploy replicas as 2. If I deploy same compose file in the Docker Swarm, how many replicas, I mean to say how many containers will be created out of this image with all these options? How many containers will be created for that image? 2. But if it is a normal Docker, will I able to scale up, scale down? I mean to say, will I able to create more containers in a normal Docker? No. So that's why, does this option will be considered when you are using normal Docker without Docker Swarm? No. So now, am I converting all these things into a one service under Docker Compose file like this? This is one service. Use this image. So whatever I am passing using -e, did I define that under environment option? Under environment, this is one environment variable, its value, another environment variable, its value, another environment variable, its value. So whatever I am doing using -p, did I define that like this? Ports. If you see why this one, what this represents, can I define something like this? Suppose some applications, some images might have a multiple ports also. Just to give an example, if you are running Jenkins, does Jenkins will have a web interface port as well as a JNLP port, that slave port? This indicates array, which means, is it equivalent to this one? Is it equivalent to this one? Suppose some containers have multiple ports. So is this equivalent, whatever I am doing here, is it equivalent here? Yes. So that indicates that one. So guys, while creating a container also you can mention working directory, but this is not required. You no need to mention that working directory. Now, is this equivalent? Is this equivalent to this one? Hyphen network. This one. This one. Yes. Now, for this one there is no volumes I am using. That's why I'm not using volumes. But for other applications, did I use volumes like this? So create this container or service using this image. These are the environment variables, create in this network. This is the value. So this is also array, which means, can I use multiple volumes? Just to give an example, I'm giving. Is this equivalent to multiple -v's? Is it equivalent to multiple -v's like this? Something like this. So that also indicates that one. So this is one in service information. This is another service. This networks also. Can I place my containers in multiple networks? Suppose I have another network. Can I define that one also like this here? If you have that use case. So if I use this compose file, I will explain this option later. What is this external? I will explain this option later. Now, if I use this compose file, does this volume will be created and does this network will be created like this? Does these two, does those two above? Does it will create a volume and network? Now, am I using this volume in my container? Am I using this network in my container? Yes. Now, mutual dependency startup order. Let's say, I mean to say, I am creating this container, but while starting this container itself, this application is trying to communicate with another container, another application. So before this container is created, I want other container to be created first. So can I use something called a depends on? Can I use something called depends on? That is mutual dependency startup order. Even though I have defined this service first, even though I have defined this service first in my compose file, because of this one depends on Mongo. That Mongo is nothing but your service name here. That depends on Mongo. That Mongo is nothing but your service name here. Because of this line, even though this is created, this is defined first in the compose, which container or which service will be created first, even though this is defined in the first, which one will be created first? This one, mutual dependency startup order. So even though this is defined first, does Docker Compose will make sure first this container, I mean to say this service will be created first before it create this container? Because of this one, this service depends on this service. Just it is going to make sure this container will be created first, then only it will create this container. Now communication, I am not giving any name like this. I am not giving any name like this, container name, something like this. But if I am using services here, does this service will be able to communicate with this service using this name, whatever name I have given, service name? Guys, if required, can I give ABC also here? Instead of Mongo, can I give ABC also here? Yes, but some meaningful name. Guys, it will validate only this option, this one, this one, this one, this one. But is it going to check what values you are giving? Does Docker Compose, will they able to understand what values you are giving? No. But is it going to check whether you are using this attribute or this attribute? If I say instead of image, if I say something like this, it will throw error. It will throw error. But here instead of this one, if I give ABC, when I am using compose, it will not throw any error, but will it able to pull that image? Is this a valid registry repository? No. So keys will be verified, not values. That keys will be verified, not values. But again, this one is a service name. You can give any name also. So that's why whatever name I have given for this Mongo service, did I use same name as a host name here? So that this application, this container will be able to communicate with this container using this name. Suppose here I have given Mongo DB, but if I am using Mongo here, does this container will be able to talk to this container now? If I use Mongo DB here and here Mongo, no. So whatever I am using, if it is Mongo DB, do I need to use that as a here also, Mongo DB as a host name? Yes. So this is service. This is service. Now let me create manually so that you can easily understand, because if I type so that you can easily understand, if I type that YML, you can easily understand instead of again copy pasting. You need to write manually so that you can easily understand. Sometimes in the interview also they'll ask, can you write some sample compose file? Can you write some sample Docker file? If you copy pasted, will you able to write? Whatever I have shared, if you copy pasted, you will not able to write. Even though I am sharing, this compose file in the running nodes, while you are trying to deploy, do you need to write manually so that you can understand where what is what? When you are learning, don't copy paste, type everything, something like this. So I'll type everything, something like this. So version like 3.1, services, volumes, networks. So here Can I say something like this? Spring app from which image? This is my registry. Docker hands-on slash spring hyphen boot hyphen mongo. Guys, if I don't give something like this, which tag will be used? If I don't give something like this, which tag will be used always? Colon latest. Suppose if you don't have that image in the registry, will it able to pull that image and create a container? No. So you need to give a correct tag. Now port mapping. Can I give something like this? Whatever host port I want to use, something like this. And can I use something like this? Networks, in which network I want to create this one? Guys, when I am using IDs, is it helpful showing where exactly this is started, where exactly this is started? Will I able to see some kind of a indentation, right? Now if I do something like this, is it throwing some kind of a warning or kind of a error, like in a red mark, right? So this will help. Now can I pass environment variables also? Whatever options I used using -e, can I pass all these environment variables like this? MongoDB hostname equals to Mongo and another environment variable like this, MongoDB username. Did I use all those things in the command also while creating using command also? And can I use something like this? MongoDB password. Guys, if you use hash character, hash represents what in YML? Comment. So is it going to be comment like this? Yes. So I'm using something like this. Now this is one service. Can I define another service maybe here? Is this correct? Another service, is this correct? No. Or is this correct? Is this correct? Another service? No. Even though it is not throwing any error, is this correct? YML will not understand what is this. This is just a YML plugin. But do you think is this correct even though it is not highlighting anything? No. This is not correct. Is this correct now? Can I use that image? Can I use volumes if I want to mount some volumes? Can I do something like this? Data/db. Can I pass some environment variables? Volumes. This is missing. So can I pass some environment variables? Environment. Whatever environment variables expected to pass this one. Mongo init username devdb. Another environment variable, something like this. Guys, don't focus too much here, right? So sir, here you have an image first, environment next, volumes later. Don't consider all these things. In YML, does this order matters? Do I need to define image first, environment later, like this? Can I have something like this also? Can I have something like this also? Yes, order is not matter, indentation, the placement matters. Now networks. So same network. Now this way I can define. Can I define my volume information, whatever I'm using here, that volume name like this? Volume name, just volume name. You don't need to define anything after this. Guys, if you want to define driver for volume, something like this, can I define? Driver, local or X-ray, whatever it is. Even though I don't define this one, what is the driver will be used to create this value? Local. Now can I define my network information, whatever I am using here, something like this? Now, using this compose file, if I deploy, do you think all these four will happen? Does this will happen, this will happen, and does these two also will happen? Yes. So does Docker Compose will simplify the process of deploying multi-container applications or single container? Yes. So let me take this compose file. Let me take this compose file. Now I want to deploy in this server. I want to deploy in this server. Those containers, those services I want to deploy in this server. Let me connect to this server. Let me connect to this server. Let me connect to that server. If I just create that file, do you think it will deploy? If I have that file in that server, do you think it will deploy? If you just have that file, do you think it will deploy? No. Do you need to apply that file? I mean to say, do you need to use that file and apply? Yes. So as of now, let me delete all the containers, whatever I have in this machine. Whatever I have in this machine, let me delete so that you can understand easily. So Docker, this is my deployment server. Docker ps, nothing is there, ps-a. Let me do this. Docker ps-aq. Now this one, did I deploy manually last time in the yesterday session? Did I manually executed Docker run 2 times to do this? Now Docker volume ls, these many volumes are there as of now. These many networks are there as of now. So now this is my compose file. What is the default name of compose file, guys? What is the default name of compose file? Again, what is the default name of compose file? Sometimes in the interview also they'll ask, what is the default name of compose file? Default name of compose file. The default name of compose file is docker-compose.yml, or can it be a YAML? YAML also? Yes. Sometimes people are asking, not in the interview, our students are asking, sir, what is YML and what is YAML? Is both are different? Is both are same? Is both are same, guys? Both are same. There is no difference. The extension name, it can be YML or YAML. There is no difference here. Now, if required, can I have a compose file with custom name? Can we have a compose file with custom name? Yes. If I have a compose file with custom name, can I use this -f option when I am using Docker compose commands? Yes. Now, let me create with the default name, something like this. I'm creating directly here, but that is not the case. This is my compose. Sorry guys, you should not have any tab spaces. Okay. This is my compose file. So if I just have a compose file like this in that server, do you think that containers will be created? If you just have a compose file like that, no. So do I need to use that compose file to deploy or manage anything? Yes. Now, what commands I can use now? I have a compose file. What command I can use? There are commands related to compose. The commands are docker-compose, and you have some commands. You have some command with options. With options. So, example, docker hyphen compose. I can use up hyphen d. I can use this command docker compose up hyphen d, docker compose. Just I can use create. I can say docker compose down, something like this. Docker compose down, docker compose start, docker compose restart, docker compose stop, docker compose ps, docker compose images, docker compose logs. Like this I have some commands. Like this I have some commands. So as of now, do I have a compose software installed in that server to execute this command? No. So if I execute a docker compose create, what it does, what docker compose create does, it is just going to create services, which means it is just going to create a containers. But is those containers will be started? Whatever is part of the compose file, it will just create. Is that containers will be started? No. It will just create. If I want to start those containers, do I need to again execute docker start? Sorry, docker compose start. So how many containers it will create, how many containers it will start, that depends on what, guys? How many containers it will create, how many containers it is going to start, that depends on what? That depends on whatever services you have defined in the compose file. Suppose if I just defined one service, is it going to create only one container? Suppose if I have defined a 10 services, if I have defined 10 services in that compose file, is it going to create all those 10 services? I mean to say containers? Yes. So the scope of these commands, the scope of these compose commands, is it entire system? Is it entire Docker host? Or is it scope is related to whatever is defined as part of the compose file? The scope of all these commands, is it related to that compose file only? Yes. So does this command will expect a compose file in that folder where I am executing this command? Without having a compose file in that folder, if I execute these commands, any compose commands, do you think will it work? If I don't have that compose file in that folder where I am executing this command, do you think these compose commands will work? No. So do I need to have that compose file in that folder where I am executing these commands? Yes. So just to make it simple, what is difference between docker ps and docker compose ps, guys? What is the difference? And also what is the difference between docker images and a docker-compose images? Just to make it simple, what is the difference between these two? Does docker ps will show all the containers which is running in that system? Does docker ps will show all the containers which is running in that system? Yes. Docker ps will show all the containers which is running in that system. But a docker compose ps, does it going to show all the containers which is running in the system, or whatever containers is created out of that compose file? It will show only whatever is defined in that compose file. Whatever is defined in that compose file. Now does docker images will show all the images which is part of that system? But does docker compose images will do all the images list? No. Whatever is used in that compose file. So similarly, if I do down, start, restart, if I do docker compose restart, does all the containers which are part of that compose file, whatever we have defined, is all those containers will be restarted? If I use docker compose restart, does all the containers whatever is defined in that compose file, is it going to be restarted? Yes. So What this docker compose up-d does basically? What this docker compose up-d does basically? It is like a create. It is like a docker compose create plus docker compose start. Docker compose create plus start is docker compose up. But what is this -d? What is this -d? Detached. Because it is going to create and start, I want to start my services in a detached mode. So that is how it works. But if I execute the command like this, as of now, do I have a compose file in this current folder? Do I have a compose file with this default name? Yes. But do I have the Docker's compose software? Does this compose command will work? No. No, I don't have this software. Can I install this Docker compose software in whatever way I want to install? Using package manager also I can install like this. Or can I follow these instructions whatever I have given here, like downloading that compose software version from the official code base, like this also you can install. So if required, you can install Docker compose by following official instructions. Guys, most of the projects or most of the softwares, whatever you are going to install, any software, be Jenkins, be Docker, Kubernetes, Tomcat, MySQL, MongoDB, are you going to refer official websites? What are the prerequisites to run that software and what commands needs to be used? Because I am getting some kind of a question. Sir, I got into a project. So can I install by following Mithun Technologies blog? So I want to install some software. You have already given some Mithun Technologies blog. Can I follow all those instructions? Something like this people are asking. Sir, can I follow your running nodes? I want to install some Docker. If you want to install same version, you can do that. If you want to install same version, you can do that, because we are also taken those commands from the official website and only we kept that. But if your application says different version, different OS, then whatever commands we documented, will it work for if it is a different operating system, if it is a different version of the software you want to install? No. In that case, do you need to follow official document? This official document is like a menu, guys. I mean to say manual. When you purchase mobile, when you purchase fridge or AC or TV, are they going to give some kind of a manual, user manual, how to use that one? Similarly, each software has some official website. Similarly, each software has some official website. So that official website is like a user manual for that software. So can I follow that official website, kind of a user manual, how to install and use that software? Be it Jenkins, be it Docker, be it Kubernetes, or any other software. Yes. So I want to install Docker Compose. As per your requirement, you can install anyway. So can I follow this instruction if I want to install Docker Compose in Linux? Again, within Linux, you have different, right? So in general, can I follow this one? Can I download that Compose software from the official GitHub of that Compose? So this is Docker GitHub repository. So does Docker as a company, are they having some GitHub repository? Are they having their code in that GitHub, like a Docker Compose software code? Yes. So if you see github.com/docker/compose, let me go there. github.com/docker compose/compose. So do I have multiple versions of that software, like 1.x 1. This is compose software. I can go to the releases. I can go to the releases of this repo. Then I can see whatever release I want to download, right? So otherwise, can you install using package manager also? Can you install using package manager also if required? Yes. So if required, can I follow these instructions? Same instructions I have given here. Suppose I want to download a different release. I don't want to install Docker Compose 1.29.2. Can I go to this releases and can I install whatever release? Suppose I don't want to install this one. Can I go with this one? All these things. Version 2.4.1. If I want to install this version, can I download this one as a tar file or zip file like this? This one based on your operating system and architecture. Can I use this URL? Something like this. Can I use this URL? I can copy this link address. Can I use this URL to download that version of the Docker Compose instead of whatever I am giving here? That is up to you based on your requirement. You can follow this one. Same thing I have given here. If I use like this, is it going to download this package? And later, can I execute this one, which will install that compose file into the user local bin? I am downloading that compose software into user local bin. Here I am changing the permissions. I am downloading that compose software into user local bin and I am changing the permissions. After this, does this compose commands will work? If I do these three instructions, if I execute this instruction and this instruction, yes. Otherwise, can I install like this also using package manager? Is that package manager also doing internally same thing? Is it downloading that compose software and installing in the background? Yes. Now, do I have a Docker compose installed now? Docker compose hyphen version. Do I have a Docker compose installed now? This version of the compose. Do I have a Docker also now in this server? Docker is different, Docker compose is different. But does Docker compose will work without Docker? Does Docker compose will work without Docker? No. So do I have a Docker and Docker compose both in this server now? Yes. Now, does these commands will work? Does Docker compose commands against this file? Now, can I validate compose file first, whether that compose file is proper or not? In the Ansible also you have an option to validate your playbook, whether your playbook is proper or not. What option you used, guys, in Ansible to validate your playbook? If you remember, did you guys done some kind of a dry run? Some kind of a dry run, hyphen syntax check. Hyphen syntax check. Dry run is different, syntax check is different. Hyphen check is a dry run, hyphen check is dry run. Hyphen syntax check, did you guys used whether that YML is proper, Ansible playbook is proper? Yes. Similarly, can I do some kind of a command on this Docker compose file, whether that compose file is proper or not? For that one, I can use docker-compose config command. So does this command will validate this compose file, whether the compose file is proper or not? Yes. Only syntax check, guys. But without having this file in this current folder, if I execute this command, will it throw error saying that not able to find some file like that? Let me show you. So I am renaming that one to a different name. Instead of default name, I am renaming it to different name. Now I have a file with a different name. Now if I execute any docker compose command, am I getting error saying that can't find suitable file in this directory or any other parent directory? Are you sure you are in the right directory? So what is that supported default file names it is expecting is in the current folder where I am executing that? Docker compose.yml or compose hyphen. But if I have a file with custom name like this, can I use one option called -f, that file name, then option, docker compose -f, your file name, then your command. Now here, is it saying some error? Is it saying some error? Error in version is invalid. It should be a string. So if it is a string, is it expected me to pass in a double quotes? That one, this one. Is it expecting me to pass something like this? If it is normal 3, is it going to be considered as a numerical value? If I just something like this, does this will be considered as a number instead of string in YML? If I just give like this, is it a number or string in YML? Number. But version is expected as what by compose? String. Then can I define something like this within double quotes? Then will it become a string now? Even though that is 3, it will be a string now. Now, is that compose file is valid again? Is it valid again? Why it is not valid? Unsupported config option environment. So is there a typo? Am I using unsupported option? Am I using unsupported option? There is a typo. Environment. Environment. Is it saying where exactly you have errors also? In that compose file, under services, under this service, you have some option issues. Now if everything is perfect, will I able to see that compose file output like this? If everything is perfect? Yes. Suppose I am making some indentation problem, indentation issues. I am not defining properly. Do you think is this correct? Do you think is this correct? Now this one here, other things are here. So is it going to throw some kind of a error, parsing error, YML parsing error? So it is saying line number 3, column number 3, you have a problem. So that is parsing error. Here I have some problem. Now I am using perfect, but I am using in again something like this, images or port like this. Is it a proper options? As per this compose file format version, it is not a correct attributes. Again, am I going to get an error when I validate? Is it saying unsupported option images? I will say image. But again, is it going to say again one more? Is it going to say one more time unsupported option port when I validate? So did you mean ports? You are using port. So it is not port, it should be ports. But here, is this going to check whether you are giving ABC here, XYZ here in the values? Does this will be verified? Does this will be verified? Does this will be verified when you are doing a syntax check, that config check? Does these values will be verified? No. Only keys. As I already told, this service names, can I give ABC, XYZ also? Yeah. Now here I am not using any depends. If I apply this compose file, which container, I mean to say which service will be created first? If I deploy like this, which service will be created first? Which container will be created first? If I deploy like this, observe, people are saying Mongo, but did I use that depends on in the Spring app? No. So in that case, which one will be created first? In that case, this one will be created first, whatever has been defined. Now, can I use something like this that depends on or basically mutual startup or dependency order? Can I say something like this? Depends on something like this, that service name. Here ABC I have given, but here if I give Mongo, again will it throw error? If I give ABC here and depends on I have given as XYZ, again throw error. So make sure you are using correctly. Now, if this is the case, even though this is defined first, which service, which container will be created first if I apply Mongo? Now let me apply. Now this is a div custom name. This is custom name. I need to use this -f option for all the commands. Now my YML is proper. Can I use something like this? Up -d. Is it going to create and start? But instead of this name, if I have a default name, is -f is mandatory. Again I am renaming. Again I am renaming. Is -f is mandatory? If I have with the default name like this for any command. Now can I use docker compose config also without -f option? Yes. Now can I use something like this? Up -d. Now if you see, is it creating a network volume and containers also? Is it done everything? Now if I see docker ps, is this containers are created using docker run? Did I executed multiple docker run commands? No. Now if I see, is this volume also created by compose? Is this network also created by compose now? This one, this value, this network, this volume and this network. I got an output saying that this network is created, this volume is created. So is this network, is this volume also created by compose, and is those volumes and networks are used in these containers? Yes. But you may have a question, sir, why I see Ubuntu as a prefix in my compose file? I have given volume name something like this only something like this, Mongo val Spring App Bridge. I am using like this only. But why there is a prefix called Ubuntu? Why compose is created? The container names basically also with that Ubuntu underscore service name, Ubuntu underscore service name like this. Container names also, volume names also. What is that Ubuntu? Do you think is that a user? User? No. That is not a user. That is not a user. Don't consider that as a username. That is basically current working directory. The present working directory. What is the present working directory name, guys? Where I have a compose file, from where I have applied. What is the present working directory name? Ubuntu. Ubuntu. So I have a compose file in that location. Is this folder name is considered as a prefix for that services, containers, I mean to say volumes and networks? But now if I have a compose file in this project, if I have a compose file in this project, if I go inside that folder and I have a compose file, if I apply that compose file, does this will be taken as a prefix? That is your project name or application name? Yes. So that is not a username or operating system name. That is working directory name. I mean to say present working directory where you have that compose file from where you are applying. Is everyone clear? What is that Ubuntu? Don't consider that as a username or operating system name. Now let's say I am executing docker compose ps. Can I see whatever containers got created using that compose file? But again, without having this file, again, does this command will work? Without having this file in the directory, again, does this command will work? No. So can I see docker compose images? Is it showing only those images? You see the difference between docker images and docker compose images? You can understand. Is the scope of that commands is related to only that compose file? Yes. Now if I execute docker compose down, docker compose down, is it going to remove, I mean to say, is it going to stop those services, I mean to say containers And is it going to delete those containers now if I execute docker compose down? Is it going to delete everything, whatever we have in that server, or whatever is relevant to that compose file? Whatever is relevant to that compose file. Now if you see, it has stopped the containers, it has removed the containers, it has removed the network also. But do you see, is that volume is deleted, whatever volume created by compose? No, because his volumes are important. His volumes are important. Yes. Now if I again execute docker compose up, is it going to do that again? Docker compose up -d. Is it going to deploy this again? It is creating a network, but volume is not created because it is already there. Again, do I have my containers? Now will I able to access this application using this host port, whatever I have used? I can use docker ps also, or docker compose ps. I can access this one. Now this one will be able to communicate with this one. Now if I execute docker compose logs, what does it mean? Is it showing the logs of both replica, I mean to say both services? Is it showing the logs of that Spring application container as well as Mongo application container if I execute docker compose logs? Something like this. Something like this. So you need to give that full name. If you want to see the specific logs, you need to give that full name, something like this, Ubuntu underscore Mongo underscore 1. If I execute docker compose ps, it will show all these things, logs, all these things. If I say docker compose stop, is it going to stop both the containers, whatever has been created using that compose? Yes. This is one variant. Now, one more variant is there. Here, I can say something like this, external true. External true. What does it mean? I can define my volumes and networks as something like this, external true, external true. What does it mean? What is this external true? Indicates compose. If I say volume as external true, network as external true, does compose will manage, I mean to say, does compose will create these volumes and networks even they don't have, even though we don't have these volumes and networks already in that server, does compose will create a volumes and networks if I say external true like this? Does compose will create a volume and network if we don't have already in that server? If I say external true, no, it won't create. Is it external to the compose, which means does this volume and network has to be created outside of compose, which means manually again if you don't have those things? Yes. Let me show that variant also. First let me delete whatever I have. Now can I have something like this? Here external true, volume, external true, something like this. I'm saying something like this. Now I am saying external true for this one also. Now if this volume and network is not part of the server, does this volume and network will be created by compose now because of this external true option? Does this volume will be created by compose? Does this network will be created by compose now if because of this option external true? No, it won't be created. If I don't have this volume and network already available, is it going to throw error now? Let me show that. When I apply, guys, this is not when you are doing a config check. This is not you are doing a config check, right? So sometimes it is showing doing a config check also not allowed. That external, there is a typo. There is a typo there. external. I am saying external true. This is just a syntax check. This is just a syntax check. This is just a syntax check, but again there is a problem here. Here my volume name is this one, but am I using same volume here? Whatever volume I defined here, I am using different volume. So that's why again problem. Now I have to use same thing. This is just a syntax check now. But is it really checking whether this volume is already there? Is it network is already there? Is it really checking? No. But when I apply this one, is it going to throw error if that volume and network is not there in that server? When I do like this, is it going to throw error saying that this error? What does it mean? What does it mean? Network is not available. But is Docker Compose is creating that network now, even though it is not available? With this name, there is no network. It is not creating. Why it is not creating? Did I say like this external true for that network? Because of that, it is not creating. In that case, do I need to manually create a network? Something like this, Docker network create. That network name, same name. Now, if I apply compose file, again, will I get a error saying that volume? Sorry, here also, I need to update that network names. Here I am using this one, but here I have not used that networks. So here also I need to use that one. I am defining something and I am using something else. That's why it is throwing error. So let me define this. Now network issue will be gone now. Network issue will be gone now. But will I get a error saying for volumes? You are using volume, but that volume is saying as external true. This one. Because of this value, again I am getting a error. Do I need to again create a volume also manually like this? Docker volume create with whatever driver you want to create with that something like this. Now, does this will create only services now? Does this will create only services now because volumes and networks are outside of compose now? Is it creating only services? If I execute Docker compose down also, this time is it deleting network? Last time it was deleting network. This time is it deleting network also? No, because it is external. Now this way, can I only manage containers with a compose and volumes and networks outside of compose using that external flag? Yes. Since I have not used -d, is containers are started in an interactive mode. If I press Ctrl C again, does this will stop both containers if you see? In that case, do I need to use like this -d? Yes. Now without making any changes, if I execute one more time, Docker compose up -d, what I am getting, guys? Am I getting it is up to date? Now I want to give one assignment before I wrap up the session. That's it for Docker compose. That's it for Docker compose. Is everyone clear? What is Docker compose and how it works? Sir, what if we give external false? That external false is equivalent to removing that one only, guys. True or false, that is Boolean only, right? Now I can use Docker compose. Now I want to give one assignment. Now I want you to do CI/CD using compose also now. I don't want to execute Docker run commands now. I want you to use Docker compose commands in the deployment server. Will you guys do that as an assignment? Let me quickly explain the steps or stages also. Maybe you can take any application. Maybe you can take this application, also fine. So clone this project. Clone this project. Do you already have a compose file in that project? Clone this GitHub into your own repository. Do you already have a compose file here? And modify this compose file. Modify this compose file. Don't use as is, because this is which registry? Is it my registry, guys? Yes. Now, what I want you to do, clone this project or maybe other project also. I want you to do the CI/CD using that compose file I want to deploy. So can I have something like this? I'm showing that stages also, but you should be able to do, guys. Without showing this also, you should be able to do, because you already know everything. So can I do something like this? Can I clone that project? Can I first do this one, MVN clean package? Then can I build this image and push this image to the registry? Then can I authenticate with registry and push? Now I have a compose file. Can I copy that compose file to the deployment server? Here, SCP, SH, SCP. I'm copying that compose file to the deployment server. Does this compose file will be part of your Jenkins workspace? Because that compose file is part of your source code. Will I have that compose file which you can copy to the deployment server if required? So to the deployment server, which folder you are copying? Your user home directory, maybe Ubuntu directory. Now then, can I execute something like this? Docker compose up, Docker compose up -d, something like this in my deployment server. I am copying that compose file. I am copying that compose file. Can I do something like this? Now, in which server I want to have a Docker compose installed? Do I need to have a Docker compose installed in the Jenkins server, or do I need to have a Docker compose installed in that server where I am deploying? In the server where I am deploying. Now, one enhancements to this pipeline. If I am not using any tag here, so what is the tag it will create, guys? Image will be created with which tag now? If I am not using any tag here, :latest. So here, what tag is being pushed? What tag is being pushed? :latest. Now, in my compose file, let's say in my compose file, I am having like this, that latest only. But now I want to do some kind of enhancements. For each and every build, I want to have a Docker image. I want to maintain. For each and every change of my code, I want to have a Docker image maintained in the registry. In that case, can I use some options while building this image? Can I use combination of build number or branch name or commit ID also if required, whatever, build number, branch name or commit ID, that unique. So if required, can I get something like this? You no need to get like this also. You no need to get like this also. You no need to get like this also. You no need to get into a variable. Can I directly use this build number like this also without getting and without referring this one here as a tag, right? Can I directly use this one? If you want to reuse, you can use this one. Otherwise, you can directly have like this. Instead of having like this, you can have directly like this. Now, for each build, one image is built. Now, can I use the same one while pushing also like this? Whatever image I built, can I push the same image like this? I have built with this image with this tag. Can I push that same image? Now, the problem here, you have a compose file like this in the source code. You are creating an image like this. You are pushing the image like this. but in your compose file you have something like this. Whatever image is being built and pushed, does the same image is going to be deployed by your pipeline? If you have something like this, is it going to deploy same image if you have something like this? You are building image like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for each build, and is that even though you are doing a deployment, is that latest image will be deployed, latest code will be deployed now if you have something like this? No. In that case, what needs to be done? You should have a solution for this. In that case, what needs to be done? Instead of having something like this, maybe I can replace this latest. Can I replace this latest with that actual build number in my pipeline using SCD? Or maybe instead of having like this, can I have something like this in my compose file? Some kind of a placeholder, some kind of a placeholder. Can I have compose file like this? Something like this, instead of colon latest, can I have something like this? Some placeholder. Then before I do this, before I copy this, before I copy this compose file, can I have one stage in my Docker itself? Update image tag in compose file, something like this. Can I use some kind of a SCD command? Can I use some kind of a SCD command here to replace identify this place, identify this, search with this one? Can I replace that version with the actual build number? I am not giving complete syntax. You should be able to do this because you already know SCD. So can I do that in the Jenkins itself on the fly? Can I update that compose file using SCD? Can I replace this version with actual build number in that compose file on the fly in the Jenkins workspace? If I have a compose file like this, as a placeholder I am having something like this, can I replace this one with actual build number, whatever image I am building and pushing? Can I update using SCD command in the Docker, I mean to say Jenkins directly in the Jenkins workspace? Once I do this, if I copy, does this will be replaced? Does this will be replaced with actual build number what you are building? Is it going to be copied with that updated compose file? Is that compose file will be copied to your Jenkins deployment server? Now, if you apply then whatever image you are building, whatever image you are pushing, that image tag you are updating in the compose file, then you are copying. So for every build, will I able to deploy whatever image I am building, whatever image I am pushing, will I able to deploy that as a container using this compose? Sometimes these type of questions also asked in the interview. But if you know the concept of Jenkins, if you know the concept of Docker, and here and there some kind of a Linux options, will be able to explain how to do if they ask these type of scenarios. But you need to think, not always by heart what we are explaining. Don't always focus on what I am explaining. Balaji sir has this one as one stage, this one as another stage, this one as another stage. Maybe I might not have explained this stage, but you got a requirement. Do you say Balaji sir or Bhaskar sir not explain that scenario or that stage they have not explained? You should not say like that. Based on the requirement, do you need to apply your knowledge and implement that solution? Yes. So learn that way. If you know the concepts of all these tools, you can automate anything. I want to you guys to do this as an assignment. Can you guys do this as an assignment and share the pipeline? Here I am using scripted. Here I am using scripted. If required, will you do it in a declarative way also? That does that matters? Does that matter for this requirement? No. Whether you want to do scripted, declarative, whether you want to do everything in the main Jenkins server, or can I, I want to do something in the agents also. Can I have a agents added for Docker? I mean to say Jenkins, where I can install Docker. Can I do all these things in that agent instead of main Jenkins server? Can I run all these stages in that agent server also if required? If I have a Maven installed in that agent, if I have a Docker installed that in the agent, do I need to install Docker in the main Jenkins server? If I have a separate agent where I have installed Docker, if I do all these things in the agent server, do I need to have a Docker installed in the main Jenkins server? Do I need to install Docker in the main Jenkins server? If I have an agent where I have a Docker installed, can I use agent concept here? Can I run all these stages in that agent where I have a Docker installed without installing Docker in main Jenkins server? Yes, guys. All these things are already discussed, but you need to apply all those knowledge. But I don't want you to do all those things again. Don't create any agent. Install Docker in the main server itself, main Jenkins server itself. Then do all these things in the main controller itself. So this is the assignment for the week. I want everyone to do this assignment. Do you have similar or same type of things you do in the project also for each microservice? Automation. If you are already done all these things, will you able to explain what is CI, what is CD, how you can create containers using Jenkins also automation? If they ask in the interview, you should be able to explain all these things. So do this as an assignment. I'll continue on Monday with the Docker Swarm. With the Docker Swarm. So what is Docker Swarm? Why do we need Docker Swarm? So Monday and Tuesday, we will discuss Docker Swarm. Wednesday, from Wednesday, I will start this one, Kubernetes. From Wednesday, we will start Kubernetes. Okay. But I want you to finish Docker. So without knowing what is container, what is volume, what is Docker image, what is Docker file, will be able to understand what is Kubernetes, what is pod, what is deployment, what is service, all those things. No. So finish everything, whatever we discussed in the Docker. We will continue Kubernetes in the next week once we're done with the Docker Swarm. Thank you, guys. That's it for today. Have a great weekend. Do this assignment, whatever I have explained. Maybe for any application, for this application, or maybe you can try for this application also. You can try for this application also. Suppose you don't have a compose file for this application. Will you guys able to create and commit that compose file into the SCM? Suppose you want to deploy this application also using compose. Can you write something like this? Here, I have not hard coded, I kept like this. Do I need to replace this version with actual tag what I want to deploy before I apply that compose file? Using SCD or any other tool, you can do that. Okay. Thank you, guys. Have a great weekend. I'll see you on Monday on Docker Swarm. Thank you.